Good morning and welcome. It's Corporate Governance Platform brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN. I am Funmi Omoburiu. Let me quickly remind you that ICSAN is a leading recognized professional body in Nigeria that's dedicated to enhancing the status and practice of corporate governance and public administration. Today on the program, we want to look at importance of corporate governance principles to not-for-profit sector. And our guest this morning is Mrs. OLADIMEJI OKEWALE, FCIS. She's member ICSAN Building Committee, a lawyer, and a corporate governance practitioner. Good morning, Mrs. OKEWALE.
Good morning, Funmi. Good morning, listeners.
All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, with me in the studio is Mr. Kadi Ketefe, FCIS, Head of Research, ICSAN. Good morning, Mr. Ketefe.
Good morning, Funmi. Good morning to you, our guest, our special guest for that matter, Mrs. OLADIMEJI OKEWALE, FCIS, and all our listeners. Good morning to you.
All right. We're going to take this message and we'll be right back. Just stay with us.
The world is constantly evolving into a knowledge-based economy where skills and competencies constitute the lifeblood of public and corporate governance. You therefore need to empower yourself to fit into this new world by gaining basic knowledge and improving your skill set in the governance-focused disciplines. That is why every aspiring as well as practicing professional in governance field needs ICSAN.
ICSAN. What is ICSAN?
ICSAN is a leading statutorily established professional body dedicated to enhancing the status and practice of corporate governance and public administration. ICSAN members are trained as chartered secretaries and administrators.
Who are chartered secretaries and administrators?
Chartered secretaries are high-ranking governance professionals with a broad base of skills, unique amongst other professions. They are trained in law, finance, accounting, administration, strategy development, and corporate governance. In today's world, chartered secretaries and administrators discharge a wide range of duties and responsibilities, including functioning as chairmen of companies, executive directors, non-executive directors, company secretaries, risk managers, compliance managers, board evaluators, and corporate governance evaluators.
That is interesting. How then do I become a chartered secretary and administrator?
Good. Go to the Institute's website, www.icsan.org. You can also visit the National Secretariat of ICSAN at Plot 6, Elephant Cement Way, Alausa, Ikeja, Lagos, to get full information on how to become members. ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
All right, so corporate governance platform right here. And as I said earlier, we're looking at importance of corporate governance principles to not-for-profit sector. All right, Mrs. OKEWALE, let's begin this way. What are entities referred to as not-for-profit sector organizations? Mrs. OKEWALE, can you hear me?
Yes, it's breaking a bit, but I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. The question I asked is that what are entities referred to as not-for-profit sector organizations?
Right. Let's first start by saying what are the entities regarded as not-for-profit sector?
Yes.
These are organizations that are not formed so as to generate profits. They're typically dedicated to pursuing mission-oriented goals through the collectiveness of their members. The not-for-profit sector, you can say, is a vital part of the society because they encompass organizations that operate for the public good rather than profit. These entities, from time to time, they address diverse needs, which include things like poverty alleviation, education, community benefit, healthcare. They are often also referred to in some areas as the benevolent sector or the third sector, and sometimes even the civil society. In some situations, members of this sector are also called the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. They call them that because they are not based on pressure or agendas that are outlined by government bodies. And so these entities, when we're talking about them, what do they include? They include charitable entities, organizations that are formed for charitable means, youth and disability empowerment, educational entities, vocational and higher institutions, childcare, adult education centers, professional and scientific organizations or entities, political and administrative entities, political parties, political observers, lobby groups, trade groups, religious entities, literary and artistic entities. There you'll find theater groups, art galleries, concert centers. You also have the social and recreational clubs, the residents' association, the sports clubs, the cultural groups, even the alumni bodies. And of course, you have trade unions, the crafts, the enterprises, and the public service. It's not really, I haven't given an exhaustive list, but I've tried to tell you, talk about what the entities are.
Okay. All right. In talking about what the entities are, you've also, talked about the benefits that, such organizations or entities offer to the society in which they operate. But we'll move on to look at why you think it's necessary for not-for-profit organizations to apply corporate governance principles.
Okay. Corporate governance principles are essential for all organizations and not just for the non-profit organization. Because what are the principles of corporate governance? The principles are transparency and accountability, effective decision-making, risk mitigation, mission alignment, stakeholder engagement, legal compliance, long-term sustainability, ethical conduct, board effectiveness, and public perception and funding. So it serves as a standard. These corporate governance principles, they serve as standard, or you could call it a benchmark for organizations to measure their performances. We need to also realize that the changing environment also means that the not-for-profit sectors are now operating in a dynamic environment that is influenced by the social, economic, and political factors in Nigeria. And for them to adapt to these changes, such as shift in donor preferences, requirements, or emerging technologies, that they need to be prepared to embrace these corporate governance principles so as to stay relevant and responsive to these external shifts. Addressing these challenges, I think, requires a positive and very proactive approach, commitment from their leadership, and a willingness to learn. Therefore, these principles are like a structure that guides them. It prioritizes the good governance attributes and makes them more effective to both the community and the public at large.
Right. Now, the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria recently released an exposure draft on corporate governance for not-for-profit sector. Let's talk about the significance of this development.
The recent release of the exposure drafts by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria holds a very significant importance for the not-for-profit sector in Nigeria. Briefly, the exposure draft represents a significant step towards improving governance, transparency, and sustainability within the sector. At the moment, it's exposure draft, and so they are expecting the stakeholders' input. This will shape the final code. What are the key reasons? Why is this development significant? Well, it can help organizations put in place transparent and accountable framework that would assist in the identification and management of potential risks, reducing the likelihood of legal or reputational harm. Once it's finalized, it becomes a regulatory requirement to help to maintain the legal standing and access funding opportunities for the NPO, for the not-for-profit organizations. We call them NFP. The code will also assist the exposure draft when it is passed, will assist the boards and management. It will help to improve performance by promoting efficient and effective management practices. It will help the organizations to be well positioned to respond to the changing conditions and emerging issues, given the importance in today's rapidly evolving economic landscape. In line with this, the Financial Reporting Council has continuously recognized the need for a code of governance that will guide the not-for-profit sector. And in accordance, they are seeking to engage stakeholders by bringing out, publishing this exposure draft, so that in one way or the other, they will be able to strike a balance, and also the effectiveness of the provisions can be the best global.
All right. Now, would you say the provisions in this exposure draft are up to standards of the global best practices on the subject?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite get you.
Okay, I said the provisions in this exposure draft,
Yes.
do you think they are up to standards of the global best practices on the subject?
Okay. Global best practices serve as valuable benchmarks. However, we also need to consider the unique context of each country or region. And in this case, we're talking about Nigeria. Have we been able to strike a balance between the international standards and Nigeria's specific needs and legal framework? The effectiveness of the provisions will depend on the responsiveness of our organizations to incorporate the global best practices that have been considered. And that is why the stakeholder feedback is very important, to be able to allow for ongoing refinement, which is essential. I personally think that it is a work in progress, and the draft definitely intends to provide for this. You ask me, what are the major universal standards that will align it to global best practices? Simple: transparency, accountability, board effectiveness, and ethical conduct. It is believed that the overall application of these recommended guidelines should improve the operations of the not-for-profit organizations, as well as ensure long-term sustainability and relevance to the communities that they operate in.
All right. Now, how would you rate the contributions of the not-for-profit organizations to Nigeria's socio-economic development so far?
The contributions of the not-for-profit organizations to Nigeria's social economic development have been significant. Not-for-profit organizations are essentially partners in Nigeria's development journey. Their contributions extend beyond immediate relief to long-term transformation, thus making them vital agents of positive change. This impact resonates across diverse sectors, and it positively influences Nigeria's socioeconomic fabric. It creates conditions that enhance the quality of life, increases access to basic necessities and resources, reduces inequality, and promotes sustainable economic growth. They have made positive impacts because they've made significant contributions to things like entities, business areas, sectors like humanitarian assistance and crisis response, healthcare and education, arts, culture, media, youth development and leadership, capacity building and sustainability, advocacy, policy influence, community development and poverty alleviation, environmental conservation and sustainability, promoting democratic values and internal cooperation. There are so many areas in the strata of the society where there has been positive contributions from these not-for-profit organizations, and therefore they have made an impact on the socioeconomic development.
Great. And what advice do you have for organizations in the not-for-profit sector generally before we let you go?
We have agreed that the not-for-profit sector, they've made significant strides.
Yeah.
But there's always room for more growth.
Okay.
By embracing technology and strengthening their governance practices and fostering collaboration, I believe they can continue positively impacting Nigeria's social economic development. Improving governance is very crucial, and therefore improving governance in not-for-profit organizations is also crucial for their effectiveness and continued impact. My advice is, as the exposure draft goes round, they should be open to change, adapt to evolving needs and challenges facing their audience and their stakeholders, be more responsive and adapt and change for good, foster a culture of continuous learning. Continuous learning is important. improving, and to always remember that effective governance will always be an ongoing process. If we regularly assess our practices, the not-for-profit sector should regularly assess and review their own practices, learn from experience, and make the necessary adjustments so that we can ensure a long-term success and positive impact.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. OLADIMEJI OKEWALE, FCIS, member ICSAN Building Committee, lawyer and corporate governance practitioner. Thank you for joining us on Corporate Governance Platform this morning. All right, Mr. Ketefe, what advice does the Institute have for not-for-profit organizations?
Thank you very much for me. I think our guest has said much in that area.
Yes.
I will just reiterate one or two things. Now, as we have the Nigeria Code of Corporate Governance 2018 as the one that is operational as of now, the not-for-profit organizations should at least comply with it as the provisions are applicable to them, subject to scalability. And the moment the NPFO code becomes operational, they should comply with it in spirit and not just the tick box approach. Lastly, I would want to advise them that they should continuously engage in training of their board members and senior management staff with institute like our institute, ICSAN, organizes training all the year round. And if you look at our calendar, you see some of these courses that are tailor-made for not-for-profit organization. They can take advantage of this training. And they can also request special training that is organized by the training department that is specifically tailor-made for them. So lastly, they should not lose track of their benign objective, which is the provision of services to the society, and they continue to contribute their quota to national development. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Kadi Ketefe, FCIS, Head of Research, ICSAN. And that's how we'll wrap it up this morning on Corporate Governance Platform, brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN. We're back again next week, Wednesday, on a fresh edition. I'm Funmi Omoburio.